Hello, everyone. So let's talk about consciousness. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is something that not a lot of people are familiar with. Now, emotional intelligence has very much to do with us as human beings. Now, you might say consciousness in general has to do with human beings because we have the highest level of consciousness on this planet, highest specificity of consciousness, highest concentration, highest level of awareness of any species on this planet. But emotional intelligence has to do with our connection to our emotions. This is why it varies so much from one human to another. Emotional intelligence comes down to one's ability to reason why we feel this or that way, and how we can develop our emotions in a way to where we can control them, to where we don't have to be at the whim of our chemical processes, instead directing those processes so we can manifest a reality of an individual, of an identity, and shape who we are. Emotional intelligence was a thing thought by the Taoists of ancient China to be divided between the head and the stomach. Now, I want to go a more scientific route, ironically, but the idea was that your emotional intelligence in the brain was the thinking part, and in the stomach was where the spirit of that intelligence was. I think that they hinted at something very, very basic but very vital and something that really we don't think about. A lot of the time, when we feel emotionally strained, our stomach tenses up. There are other parts of the body that react in different ways, but our stomach tenses up. When we feel emotionally satisfied, we are completely relaxed in the stomach area. And when we are inquisitive, curious, there is kind of this in between, kind of this heightened station between relaxed and tense. This can be true of the mind as well, and it basically translates directly to the mind, in fact. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about in relation to consciousness is our ability to perceive time. Now, because time is a relative term, a thing that, divide those two, because time is a relative term, a thing that we use to understand the relations of things in a sequence, in a progression of moments, it is completely fabricated for the necessity of human use. We fabricated the idea of time. Now, things are relative in a linear fashion, but the idea that time passes without this relativity is completely human-oriented. And for our convenience, for our acceptance of the idea that the universe is ordered in a particular sequence. It is said that it is said that angels and demons do not perceive time in the same way. They perceive it as a sequence of events and not as something that keeps on ticking when things are not happening. So, that aside, if we relate to time as individuals, it seems very apparent in our material universe that, okay, the moon is moving 1.5 to 2 inches away from our planet a year. And in 28,000 years, it's going to be too far for us to be synced up with it. And there's going to be very major problems. There's going to be very major problems before then, but 28,000 years is the yogic calculation. Now, when we think about how long it will take for our climate to change based on our actions to the extent that our lives are going to be drastically different. That's a relation of things. And beyond even our solar system, there is a certain amount of time that will elapse before certain galaxies collide, including our Milky Way galaxy, which is a spiral galaxy, with I don't think it's a spiral galaxy, but it's another galaxy, will collide with that in a certain amount of millions of years. So we are very relative between our time and the things that happen next, but we believe that time continues to pass even if nothing happens, which in the material universe, those two things are the same thing. But in other universes, it is possible that if the relativity is not the same thing, that time will not pass. This is hard for us to understand. But if there are higher levels of consciousness or realms in which things don't move with gravity even, then sequences of events will be completely determined by the actions of any sources of agency. Things that decide to move and not are forced to move, as we are. Now, in Wicca, there is a completely different concept of time and its relation to human beings. Maybe not completely different, but very reliant upon the factors that will only scientifically seem to become a problem much later on. But moon cycles. Moon cycles is a huge thing in Wicca. Moon cycles affect the tides, most certainly, and shift them. And according to yogic doctrine and Wicca belief, the tides are the moon affecting the tides are very much tied to the emotional state of a woman. To the male as well, but to a slightly lesser degree. But the gravity and the energy in relation to the Earth's energy, the moon's to the Earth, and our reliance upon that energy to be grounded on this planet to basically feed on that grounding. And since we are so associated with these wells of gravity and the energy of the Earth, it being very much a conscious force in Wicca and in many other traditions, human beings are formed in consciousness. Their consciousness is constantly formed and reshaped by the cycles of the moon, whether they be waning or waxing, or lunar eclipses or blood moons are especially interesting events in any occult or Wicca or anybody who deals with magic or is in a particular branch of the major religions will focus on the cycles of the moon. For a Hindu understanding of consciousness in relation to the earth and the cosmos in general, I'm going to go ahead and read from the book A World in Transition, Finding Spiritual Security in Times of Change by Paramahansa Yogananda and a few of his disciples. Now, Paramahansa Yogananda is a guru, my most looked up to guru, as I am a devotee of the Divine Mother Kali Ma before anything or anyone else. So I hold his words in high esteem, you could say. But now, in Hinduism, yugas are cycles. They are vast cycles. Most Hindus believe that yugas are like around 250,000 years. So most Hindus believe that we are in Kali Yuga. Now, don't confuse Kali Yuga with Kali Ma. Kali Ma is a motherly and divine force that protects, encourages enlightenment, destroys those fears and desires that we offer up to her, and provides us with the platform to understand who we truly are. But Kali Yuga is a time where there is immense darkness, there is immense materialism, and a division from oneness, a division from the idea of God, and more gravitating towards the idea of, or the feeling, the existence of the abyss. We are dragged further towards the abyss during Kali Yuga. So, for Paramahansa Yogananda, he broke it down like this. Every single yuga, 250,000 years or more, is divided into a bunch of smaller yugas. And this was not accepted by the vast majority of Hindus, but it makes sense to me. So we are actually, according to Paramahଂsa Yogananda, in Dwapara Yuga. And I would like to read what Dwapara Yuga is. And Dwapara Yuga is an ascending cycle. We're coming out of Kali Yuga, basically, and the yugas can be considered as a circle. We are ascending, coming out of Kali Yuga, according to the calculations of Paramahଂsa Yogananda and his lineage. His master being Swami Sri Yukteswar, his master being Lahiri Moshe, his master being Sri Babaji, his master being Jesus Christ, his master being Krishna, and that is the basis of the lineage. But let me read from this book, Dwapara Yuga, The Present Cycle. This is the description. The earth has already passed through Kali Yuga, the materialistic age of 1,200 years duration. According to the calculations of my guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, we are about 240 years into Dwapara Yuga, the second age, which consists of 2,400 years. Now in its ascendancy, this is the electrical age. Even though it may yet seem very materialistic, if you think about it, you will see how man has progressed from comprehending only gross matter to understanding and harnessing the energy in matter. In this age, man will make great headway in the electrical or electromagnetic field of science. Remember, Paramahଂsa Yogananda was writing this in the 30s or 40s, so this was a while back. And he was born in the late 1800s, so just keep that in mind. Man will make great headway in the electrical or electromagnetic field of science. As Dwapara Yuga progresses, disease will be treated and healed more and more by rays. Vibratory energy can reach the electronic factors of the atoms, the building blocks of matter where gross chemicals cannot penetrate. After this war, you will see a great surge of development in electrical science. Aviation will develop tremendously also. Travel will be much more by air. Planes are still viewed with doubt by many today, just as trains were once looked upon with fear, but planes are already taking over, and trains have become almost a thing of the past. Gradually, automobiles will come to be considered as carts, which means average. The trouble in this second age is that there is not enough security, because science plays the part of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Man uses science not only to create and do good, but to destroy as well. Therefore, scientific development is not yet safe. The present world war shows how the technology of science is being used to destroy mankind. Out of the conflict, we will learn how to employ more scientific devices for human comfort. But unless we develop spiritual forces, we will also continue to use scientific knowledge to destroy. People will learn from this war the devastating consequences of the misuse of technology. In the First World War and in earlier times, it was considered chivalrous to fight. But the idea of chivalry has gone. In this war, no one wants to fight. After it is over, there will be so much fear of world devastation that if anybody tries to start a war, the rest of the world will fall upon that nation, which I think we're slowly reaching that time, hopefully. I am telling you things far ahead of my time. He's obviously talking about during the beginning of World War II. Man's destructive potential has grown much greater than his constructive power. There will be no safety in the electrical age. Methods of war on a greater and greater scale will come. So thank God that Dwapara Yuga, the electrical age, is only 2,400 years. Treta Yuga, I'll read a little bit of Treta Yuga, which is the next yuga. Next, we will come to Treta Yuga, the third era, or age of 3,600 years duration. This is the mental age, when most people will use mind power. The power of the mind will be much more highly developed than it is now. To a great extent, everything will be accomplished by that power. There will be an increase of wisdom and therefore more safety in that age. People will make a stronger effort to use peaceful means for settling their problems. There will be less use of electricity and growing use of the power of the mind. This is not to say that everyone will be able to know others' minds. But just as there are powerful radios that can tune in even weak stations and weak radios that can pick up only strong stations, so some people will have stronger mental powers than others in the age of the mind. In that mental age, by the power of the mind, we will be able to know our fellow beings better, so that it will be difficult for anyone to be wicked. There will be very little hypocrisy, because people are hypocritical only when they think others do not know their real feelings. As a result of greater understanding, humanity will learn to live more peacefully with one another. Mind power will be used for healing and as food for the body. For healing and as food for the body. So we have much to look forward to. Now, we still have some time to go before we get there. But I would like to say that, let me pick this up. I have so many notes in all of my books, by the way. I would like to say that there is hope for the near future. And the consciousness that we find ourselves in, the very materialistic consciousness as a whole, has a cap on it, has a date that it will end. In general, it's not going to end like on the dot. But we've already seen signs of this, and there are people starting to connect scientific theory and scientific methods to what human beings have known for a millennia. We're starting to connect certain things our ancestors knew compared to what we're starting to be able to prove through science, including meditation. There's been a recent study, I think in the last 10 years, and I need to look it up. I didn't prepare that for this video, but please look it up, where a certain institute studied how much your brain grows when you meditate, and I think it's 1 cubic millimeter per 6 months to a year of meditation. I'm not sure. That might not seem like a lot, but that millimeter is not just another millimeter. It is showing that the passages in the brain are widening along certain routes, to put it very basically, and that certain things are being opened. It's not so much that it is grown, but the brain is widened so much along certain routes that we have easy access to certain channels of thought, and that's who we are. We are the nervous system. Consciousness is only just starting to be understood by science. Psychology was a first step, and it's continually developed, and it will continue to develop for hundreds of years until we've, I guess you could say, mastered it. But I mean, that's something that's very, ethereal. I'm not really sure if you can pin that down. But we're starting to dive into the reality that psychology, what you do mentally, has a physical and physiological impact on how your body and your brain develops, how it exists, its chemical makeup, its electronic activity. How you think has more of an impact on your body than you may think, more so than the majority of foods that you eat. Your thought patterns have an effect on who you are. Your identity, which we place in our brains, obviously, and I kind of think emotional intelligence has a little bit to do with the body, but mainly in our brains. Everything that you think is you, everything that you supposedly know is you, is made by you. Now, there are fuels that we intake in order to aid our decisions mentally to go along certain thought patterns and basically carve our brain out without knowing it most of the time. It is best to not eat meat. If you eat meat, you're basically consuming the emotions and the pain and the animalistic instinct of an animal, and you're making it a part of yourself. The closer you can get to purely produced plant matter, the better, because all the protein we get from animals is purely recycled protein from plants. Every nutritional value we get from meat, and I haven't eaten meat for 7 years, and I lift weights, and I'm doing just fine. Every nutritional value we get from meat is just recycled plant matter. It doesn't produce anything that we vitally need. And the stomach acids to digest meat have only been developed in thousands of years. When we evolved, they weren't just there. And I do believe in evolution. I think that's a very vital part in understanding of reincarnation and karma, as I believe in it anyway. But regardless, try to eat less meat and try not to eat so many oils that they're fried in, that they're cooked in. I have been vegetarian for 7 years, but I plan to go vegan because you still get a bit of that consciousness and you still make it a part of yourself, even if you're just vegetarian. If you're eating cheese that was produced from cows that were in a terrible situation, that were abused, which is most dairy farms now, but slaughterhouses I think are the worst. But the closer we get to just consuming something that is grown out of the ground, the better for us, assuming that we have a balanced diet. Now, if you just have processed foods, dark chocolate, and corn, you're not going to have a healthy diet. You have to learn how to balance everything. I would highly recommend that you look into this, because balancing our diet will be a great aid in balancing your mind. It has been for me, and I'm schizophrenic, and it's been wonderful. So please look into this and become an agent within your consciousness. Don't be the affliction that your consciousness produces for other people to suffer through. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been some interesting spiritual facts about consciousness. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot it down in the comment section below on YouTube. If you want to contact me on Facebook and message me and friend me so we can talk more closely, I guess, go to www.facebook.com/hunter.salazar. And if you want to follow me on Patreon, which I'd greatly appreciate, I only ask for $1 a month for extra content that I write. Go to www.patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. So if you go to these places, I'd really appreciate it. And I love all of you for watching my videos. I really appreciate your feedback and just getting to know other people who have questions like this, because there's not a whole lot of people in the world who question their existence in this way and how they can better it through changing themselves on an either identity level or just a mind thought level or a physical level. We have to work together to support each other in this community who are trying to make a healthier and happier human of themselves. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see all of you on my channel in the future.